would you say, your average quote unquote run of the mill painting business probably doesn't need a visionary, right? To maximize shareholder value. Like the CEO the founder can remain the visionary, and they should hire an integrator / general manager. Like, do you think that would make most sense?
99% of painting companies are not companies. They're owner operators slinging a brush that are in startup mode, which is fine, but you've yet to build even your core three of a team, right? So you want your coordinator or your office person, your project manager, your sales leader, right? That's kind of your core three before you. Oftentimes the founder is going to wear all the hats in the company start. You're typically being wearing the integrator and visionary hat until you build out those core three.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
What's up, everybody? Mike Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you are listening to the Jason Paris Show. Let's do another episode of the Painter Growth Podcast. Joined with my friend Jason Paris. And first of all, I want to say I'm stoked to hang out with you next week in your hometown.
Dude, let's go. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm having Jason and actually Nick, but mostly Jason, come to and speak and hang out with us at our mastermind in Minneapolis next week. And I got to say, I have people from Florida and Texas coming, and they are begrudgingly coming to Minneapolis in the middle of April.
Yeah, it's a tough draw.
Yeah, but hey, we got 25
At
guys
least it's
coming.
not Canada.
Hey. Yeah, I'll go get my feelings checked for free.
Yeah. You got me.
Yeah.
At least we have more missiles, but that's about all we have to show for.
A lot more.
Not for having healthcare.
Yeah. So the what we're going to talk about today is actually a conversation I'm very excited to have. So a lot of the time when we come on in these podcasts, we're pretty broad at our topics. We talk about a lot of stuff, but for today, we're going to focus specifically on the concept of visionaries and integrators using the EOS framework, specifically for painting businesses. Because Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but you brought on a visionary and an integrator for your painting business back when you were doing like less than $1 million a year, because you knew that was a way to help you grow.
Yeah.
So
it was just over $1 million for the visionary, and I think we just crossed 2 when we brought in our integrator. But
okay.
By and large, that's accurate. Yeah.
And where would you classify yourself?
I would classify myself as a wayfinder.
Okay.
As a Lewis and Clarkian. I don't know which one I am. I think I'm probably steer more towards visionary. That's a tough thing for me to answer because I'm surrounded by, I have on my team a world-class visionary who is a better visionary than I am. And so I stepped out of that seat. And then we also have a world-class integrator where I said much better integrator than I am. I step out of that seat. So when you go through that, you feel like you're neither.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can play both roles in a startup. As a company scales and matures, maybe that's when you define I'm probably neither. Yeah.
So what is now something that's interesting that you just said is that the people that you hired are better than you. And I think that this is a really tough thing for a lot of entrepreneurs to do, is to bring on someone, in any role who is better than them at that skill that they're hiring for. It can be like, not so daunting isn't the word, like a little bit scary. There's another word that I'm missing here, but like, how did you initially overcome that when you're interviewing someone, you're sitting across from the table from someone who like legitimately is like kind of a force to be reckoned with?
Yeah. Well, not very hard for me because there's very little I'm good at. And I think that is actually kind of true. I'm a really good, like I'll say it again, I think I'm a good startup guy.
Yeah.
And
you're kind of a jack of all trades.
You have to be a generalist because if you have any major blind spots, you're going to get taken out. But to be phenomenally successful as an organization, you need a team of specialists who are really good at things. But there is I would call it ego death. There's an ego death that happens with that, right? When it's your business and you're the top dog, you feel like the man. And then when you start to take on people who are just, as you said, forces to be reckoned with, they're better than you at certain things. There's an ego death that comes with that. Then you have to put on the shareholder mindset and say, what is best for my investment in this company? As a capitalist, as a shareholder, what's best for this organization that I hold equity in? And it may not be that I get all the glory, but I am going to get the returns.
Yeah. So there's 3 ways that you can get paid from your company, right? You can take a salary, you can take dividends, or you can build shareholder value, your equity.
Sure.
And so you early on, you recognized and prioritized the shareholder equity portion. You're like, I don't need dividends, I don't need salary. I'm going to use all of the profits from the company to hire really, really great people, because that's going to grow the shareholder equity as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And to grow the distributions and the dividends, because the structure of my energy and effort can only scale so much, right? If I'm going to be the visionary and president, sales leader of this organization, it's only going to grow so much profitability that I then get to be rewarded with as the shareholder. But if I bring on partners, if I'm able to take on people who are much better than I am at these things, my distributions are then uncapped, right? They're able to grow much, much higher.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I kind of went through in multiple stages. So I remember when I started out as a painter, it dawned on me one day that I was never going to make as much money as my boss. It didn't matter how many hours I worked. And growing up, I had always been hungry for more hours at, packing grocery bags and things like that. And then I started painting outside in the summers, and suddenly I could get as many hours as my heart desired. I was limited only by the sunshine that we had. And even then I'd be pushing the limits as far as how early and how late I would get out there. But I realized that if I finally had that cap removed, or that governor removed, and I realized even then I was going to be limited in my income potential. And so that kind of got me interested in being, someone who's driven by the profitability of the company. But then you start to realize, my ability to kind of get rewarded from the profitability of this company is going to be limited by my ability to lead and effectively manage those profits. Whereas it's not, there's very different hurdles when you become an investor. You start to have an investor mindset. Then you're more limited by your ability to not have your heartstrings tugged on by the ever-ending churn of consumerism, your ability to allocate capital effectively, and to some extent, your ability to survive the ego death that comes with bringing on those forces to be reckoned with that are better than you at many things.
Yeah. So back when you were just over $1 million a year, that's about, 85, 90,000 a month. It's not a huge business.
And this is like 2017 dollars. So that's like $3 million in
Sure.
today dollars.
But you're running like 3 crews, right? Like it's not a significant organization at that point,
No, there's not much org chart there.
Yeah. So it's like you, maybe production manager, a bunch of painters.
Yep.
And what went through your head? Actually, first of all, how did you decide that you wanted an integrator first instead of a visionary first instead of an integrator? Because I would say most people would probably go for the integrator, kind of general manager first. Yeah. So what made you choose that, and how did you define it?
It's a good question. I mean, I'll give you the honest answer. It was more circumstantial than strategic. So a lot of times in life, you take what life gives you, right? And a lot of times people ask me, which roles do you hire out first in your company? And sometimes that's dictated by who you cross paths with in life. And I happen to be great friends with a world-class visionary in college. We lived together. We worked together in college. And then our paths crossed just at a time where he was looking for his next big adventure in life. And I was seeing the opportunity in Paris painting, but I also was starting to feel its cap, right? And we were growing at these phenomenal rates, because when you're a small business, you can throw out these crazy percentages of how fast you're growing. But we were nowhere near stagnant, but I could see in the distant future where I knew that with somebody really talented on the team, it wasn't going to be a 1 + 1 = 2. It was going to be a 1 + 1 = 4. And it just happened to be that I ran into a visionary first.
How did you structure the job?
Maybe there's like one thing I'll add on to that, and I'll let you ask the question, but there's some benefits to that, because with a world-class visionary, it makes it much easier to attract the rest of your core team from there. Right. And so an integrator, we were able to attract an integrator far beyond the abilities of someone I could have attracted on my own. I think so. Maybe that's not true, but I certainly believe it. An integrator will yoke up and follow, Visionary, that kind of matches their competencies. So if you have a B level integrator, they will seek out and ultimately yoke up with a B or higher level visionary. If you have an A level integrator, they will seek out and match with, it has to be an A level visionary. Otherwise they get just pulled. We can talk about that visionary integrator dynamic a little bit later, but if the integrator is stronger than the visionary, it doesn't end well.
For sure. Now, what was the job responsibility? What is the role of the visionary?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's driving shareholder value. It's more of a looking out position, a steward of culture, taking on the big projects, taking the big swings. You're taking somebody on who has phenomenal vision, phenomenal wisdom, and someone with a rock solid character. Those are kind of the attributes that I would look for. But they're not integrators, right? So for those of you who run the traction model, we just did our Q2 kickoff the other day. I don't know when this will get released, but we're recording it in April here. And it's kind of the definitions of a visionary is they cannot be assigned rocks because they're just incapable of focusing. And you call a spade, and a visionary is good at sprinkling their expertise on all the rocks, right, and helping everybody with their projects. But you can't assign rocks to a visionary because they're just not good project managers.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So how do you structure the role then? Because you have kind of the outcome. What's the role look like day to day? So just like for context, you have, what does the team look like at the time? And then you put the integrator on top, visionary on top.
So, okay. Why are there balloons?
I had balloons under my desk.
Okay. So at the time it was a pretty flat organization. And I would say this recruitment was more of a partnership recruitment than it was a board seeking a new CEO visionary. So the day-to-day role was actually pretty muddied. When we were a $1-2 million organization bringing on a visionary, this visionary ended up doing sales appointments, doing some levels of project management, and unfortunately for all of us, some financial accounting as well. And that's because we're all holding many hats. But that I'd say that's, if you're a small organization, there's kind of 3 ways to do it. 1, everybody gets really scrappy. 2, you try and hire roles fractionally, or 3, you take on debt. And we decided to go the scrappy route.
Mm-hmm. And was there, to get this, what's this person's name?
Chet.
It was Chet. Okay, cool. Thought so. Was there equity play involved to get him motivated?
Yeah. So I wanted our incentives aligned, and I wanted him in it, and I wanted some cash involved that would make it meaningful for everybody involved, and that's kind of the best across the entire organization. The more you can align the incentives to each role, the better for everybody. There's few things worse in an organization than a misaligned ARP, we call it, annual performance or pay record or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So just practically speaking, you want people that are in line. If you have a visionary, you want them aligned to grow revenues. You want them aligned to their profitability, and then to some extent, the approval of the board, right? And so the companies that we operate, well, it's actually not all of them. Most of them are manager managed, but all of Holdings is a board managed entity, and so the board would be the ones that oversees that visionary CEO.
Okay, so the company obviously couldn't. I don't imagine the company could really afford that role at the time.
Right. Not as full-time CEO.
So how do you recommend a small company look at the concept of shareholder value?
Well, there's a couple ways to do it.
When does shareholder value actually matter?
It matters if there's an inciting incident, I'd say. It matters for, I'd say, 2 reasons. 1, it matters for the vision. And so without a vision, people cast off their restraint. So it helps to reinforce discipline. 2, it'd matter for an inciting incident. With painting companies, it shouldn't matter too often, hopefully. Painting companies, by and large, don't trade for great multiples, but they do produce tremendous cash-on-cash returns. So you really are more interested in the cash. That's the real value of a house painting company, at least, is the cash flows. The shareholder value is nice, it's important, but really you're kind of stewarding that profitability.
So if you one day want to exit or bring on partners or investors or something like that,
Yep.
that's when the shareholder value really matters.
Yeah. Yep.
What was your vision at the time of bringing Chet on? What was your like 5-year out vision? I mean, now
Yeah. So
what are
we
we
pulled
at
up
now?
our,
We're 2024 and that was 20. So that was 7 years ago.
yeah, I should pull up, we were looking at our old VTO that we did together, and we did not think things were going to escalate this quickly. That was one for sure. So,
What's
you know, we
VTO?
had pretty modest goals, and I remember we were talking together, and we're like, "Wow, wouldn't it be nice if we could like buy a fourplex and just get a couple of fourplexes together? And wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to do all the bids and we could be, you know, $5 million company? Wouldn't that be awesome? And boy, that'd be great, right?" And what ended up happening was right place, right time. You know, getting the visionary first ended up being working out really well for Paris Painting, because that visionary was able to cast a vision that attracted a lot of, you know, phenomenal talent, and we're able to capitalize on the economy and the industry being pretty unprofessionalized, and it's just starting to turn the corner, but still is so. And things escalated way beyond our wildest imaginations at the time of where we thought we'd be in 3 years.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I mean, isn't that that's a fun part about business is forward thinking, thinking about what those goals are. And I mean, very fun part of when you like absolutely demolish those goals.
Yeah, it's fun to do. So on the VTO exercise, there's something called the 5-year outlook that's more descriptive in nature, and those are always the funnest ones to check in on quarterly, annually, look back and reflect on. They're good wins and celebrations when they end up being accurate. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You say, "Wow, imagine like we are doing all these things. And remember when we didn't have this? Remember we were not doing that, and now we are." Helps incite a little bit more celebration into, you know, the grind of a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that like North Star, that direction, that goal, like that 3-year goal, and knowing what you want the business to look like in 2-3 years from now. I find, at least for my business, it's so important when you have to make big decisions about like hires or the direction or products or whatever. Like you need that vision in order to make the right decisions.
Yeah. And having your integrator and your visionary aligned on those two are huge. Right. And that's where, prior to Chet, I had actually attempted a couple of partnerships with, you know, buddies from college and buddies from high school. And if the visions are not aligned, it just doesn't work out. And none of them were messy. We're all good friends now, and they're all 1-year attempts. But if the vision is not clear, and if it's not unified, it's not going to be, it can be okay. It's just not going to be amazing. And that's something we're very unified on from the very beginning. And I would say I stepped into that integrator seat until we were able to recruit and find, I think, without a doubt, a much better integrator than I am. But having that alignment from the very beginning is huge.
Mm-hmm. So what happened in that first year of bringing Chet on as the visionary?
Yeah, we blew our socks off. It was the right place, right time. This was 2017, maybe 2018. And, you know, we set a goal for revenue, we set a goal for profitability, and we outstripped, you know, both of them by a wide margin. And I think Chet was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. Part of the reason why I brought Chet on was I knew I was a really hard worker, but I wanted to make sure we were growing in the right direction and that we were maximizing all the potential that I knew laid in front of us. And I think he did a phenomenal job making key decisions and recruiting key people and all those things. But it was, you know, we started from a pretty humble place too, right? So we weren't very large and we weren't very profitable. And I was your classic owner operator that thought he was making a lot of money, but really was getting paid market wages for all the hard work I was doing.
Yeah.
And the company at the end of the day wasn't profiting very much. So we were able to shore up our gross margin, which tightened up our net profit. And that was just a fun thing for both of us to reflect on and to start to confirm that real path of, oh, this can become a profitable business that could become a great asset without either of our involvement in the day-to-day. And that was something that was cast early on, and it was good to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel pretty quickly.
So I was kind of skirting around this, but I want to ask, because I think it is important. What percentage would you recommend is meaningful enough to motivate someone like that? Because Chet's been with you now for 7 years, obviously great hire, right person and everything. So what's meaningful? What's motivating? And how do you share that future? Because like, say it's 15% of a $1 million company is not super motivating, but if you share that 5-year, 10-year vision, that can be motivating.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to structure things. I mean, with Chet, I did a 45-55, and I'm like, I want you to carry this yoke as much as I do, if not more. And he's like, I don't want to be the majority. And it's good to acknowledge the work that you've built so far. And then it comes to the pricing terms, and there's different ways you can structure that. And I would say, early on into the partnership, it was such a huge win that we both took a relook at it and said, how we make this transaction still happen, but in a very tax advantageous way, because we both just trust each other so much. But I would say, I mean, in general, when I work with, separate business units, we've had a couple different startups here in the Twin Cities. We take equity in other painting companies. When we're looking at taking on an integrator to a business unit that's going to be the driver of profitability, we say 10% is pretty meaningful. And that's kind of a good benchmark. If you're taking on, a core partner, depends what their buy-in is, depends how much you want them to like really care about it. If somebody has 1% equity in a business and they get a better opportunity in 2 years, you now have a flight risk. So part of this is, reducing the flight risk, giving people those handcuffs, and really getting them bought in to say, what else could I be doing with my life? And I would just say Chet's a very talented guy. There's a lot of things he could be doing, but kind of the goal was to say, how do I keep Chet from doing commercial real estate development and help me build this painting company? What kind of equity and profit margins would it have to be? And yeah, it worked out pretty well for both of us.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's super interesting. Now, when it comes to providing an equity stake in a business, you've seen a lot of deals. So what would be an example of some terms that might work for someone to avoid that flight risk?
Yeah. So we do a lot of deals. So Olive Holdings, we make investments in companies.
You can pitch. That's fine.
Yeah, we have 14 active partners, and a lot of due diligence goes into getting any one deal done. And
so why would someone, just real quick, why would someone want to work with Olive?
To go faster, to go farther, and to have a better quality of life getting there. I'm a big proponent of partnerships. It's not the right fit for most people, so we say no to way more people than we say yes to. But I don't know, I could give you the whole ethos on partnerships, but in general, you go farther, you go faster, and it's a better quality of life. The asset becomes more stable. Get people who are domain experts in scaling painting companies, all those reasons.
Awesome.
All I said, we take a look at a lot of deals. We craft a lot of deal terms. In general, you want to get somebody bought in so they're not a flight risk. And it also has to be a win for everybody, right? And that's something that I've always appreciated about my initial partner, Chet, was the long-term approach that he would take with things, where, I would just say I was not a very sophisticated investor back in 2017, especially compared to what I am now. But I can look back on the terms that we wrote out, and he was very generous. And you can make a squeeze in a transaction where you win today, but that might be a seed of resentment that could blossom, a decade from now. And those are just things to be careful of when you're crafting these deal terms. So the advice I would give is, think long-term. A lot of these are relationship first, especially in painting companies. If this is a, commercial real estate transaction, then do whatever you got to do. I've been part of deals where people are crying at the closing table and, requesting to do the closing in separate rooms because everybody's so pissed. But, in painting companies, it's very relationship first, and it has to be that way.
You definitely don't want to end up in the courtroom.
Nobody wins there. Right?
No.
And you all got to be big boys at the end of the day, and just be able to look each other in the eyes and shake hands. And yeah, there's a legal framework to make sure everybody understands what we're agreeing to, but there's also a lot of trust.
So say you found a integrator or visionary and you came to an agreement of a 20% equity.
Yeah.
How do you structure that? Do you I think you guys recommend that partner providing cash and buying that?
So it's nice to have it be meaningful, so that this person is really bought in. And so that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I would say when we started Olive Holdings, and one of our partners, Micah, who I think you've met before, Micah now runs all of our sales, and he trains sales reps in all of our partner companies. Micah had to go borrow money from his parents to buy equity in Olive Holdings. And that was very meaningful for him. right? And so he was very bought into succeeding, because if it didn't, he now has to go back to, what's Mr. I don't remember his name, Carl, Pat, Lyle. He has to go back to Lyle and say, yeah, remember when I dropped out of my nice job to join this painting company with the vision of starting a holdings company? It didn't work out. You were right. I should have listened to my boomer dad. Right. So now you have someone that's really bought into, they want to make it succeed, not just for their resume, but for their livelihood. Right. That's the ideal. Enough so it's meaningful, and it hurts if it doesn't work. You want them motivated to go that extra mile, put in that extra hour to figure out, come hell or high water, my back's against the wall, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
That's my advice. Now, you can structure that in a lot of different ways. Somebody doesn't have access to a lot of cash. You can do a seller finance deal, and there's lots of different ways to do that. But if you, for your listeners, if you have a painting company and you're taking on, an individual who's going to be an integrator or a visionary in your company, I can always help people with putting together a valuation of their business and then having them buy in at the equity percent that's meaningful to them, represents the burden that you want them to yoke up with you in, and ideally making it meaningful so it hurts if it doesn't work for them.
So if it's 20%, say $1 million company,
yeah, say it's profiting $330,000. You can do a 3x multiple of the profits, and that's profits. Those are adjusted net profits, so not the tax shenanigans, but also appropriate compensation for the owner for their activities. So you value it at $1 million, right? You bring on an integrator. You're gonna have them buy 10%. Make it meaningful. That'd be my advice.
Yeah. So maybe if they'd put like half down and the other 50,
put half down.
They bought.
It depends on the season of life they're in, right? They could be in a season of life where $10,000 is a lot. And you're like, yeah, I understand this. And this person's a great talent. I want to bring him on. I'm saying all these things, also just letting you know, when we brought on Alex, who's our integrator, I did a very kind seller finance note with no money down with him. But that was after he had proven himself for a year, like a year and a half as a 1099 contractor. So he came in as a fractional COO to start, proved his way for a year and a half, with the expectation that there'd be a nice carrot of an equity opportunity.
Yeah.
That's another way you could do it.
Okay. And when you say seller finance, you mean you like basically garnish wages?
So it's out of the distributions.
Out of the distributions.
Yep.
Okay. Like the annual or quarterly shareholder profits.
Right. Yep.
Cool. All right. So let's move on now. So you back to Paris painting back in the day.
Yeah. Paintbrush and a dream.
Paintbrush and a dream. You and Chet are working together for about a year, and then you're like, you know what? We need an integrator.
Yeah.
How did you make this decision? What was going on in the company? And
part of it was our vision that we had. So we wanted to grow Paris painting, but we really had the idea of starting a holdings company, and this was going to be the test kitchen, kind of the engine of getting things all started. And we didn't know if it'd be, we'd buying plumbing companies and electrical companies, and who knows, but we've gotten much more refined as the years have come on. But with that vision, I think if we had just thought about running a $5 million painting company, we may have just said, let's hammer this out. This will be fun. It was a big enough vision that we knew at some point, neither of us wanted to run that kind of an organization, right? Neither of us wanted to run, $150 million holdings company of trades businesses. So we knew that was going to happen eventually. And then again, there's this lightning in a bottle aspect of life's, the paths cross and you take advantage of them. And I would say sometimes you got to make a hire early for a key person. It's advantageous to make an early hire if it's the right person. And you don't know when you get another opportunity to hire a person like that again. People usually lean into that too much as tradespeople, but
it's scary to do that. It's scary
to do it. I've done it a couple of times. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Right. But you make a calculated risk and you'd say, I know that this organization will need somebody like that for sure in the next 3 years. I don't know if I'm going to run into somebody like this within the next 3 years.
Yeah. Right?
Especially when you're startup, you're early on. It's someone you have previous life experience with. You trust their character. So you can kind of trust competency, character and common sense of purpose. All those are aligned. That can be a tough thing to find.
And there is the concept of like one-way doors and two-way doors in business, right? So like this is not a one-way door. When you make this hire, you're not committing to this person for a year. Like in the first month or two, you should know if they're the person.
Yeah, you should vet them. I mean, we believe in performance-based culture. So we believe in accountability, and not every organization is like that, right? And that's just one of the core values of Paris Painting, which is transferred over to the core values of Olive Holdings. Accountability is a big component of what we do. And some people prefer to do, instead of a meritocracy, they may do, tenure-based, style, where the longer you stay, the more you get paid. We do it based off of your performance and what you do and output on. So, sometimes the door oftentimes it's self-selected, right? Rarely is somebody a low performer and it's, their desire to stay in their role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as it goes back to like piece rate, all the way down to the painter, if they're not performing and they're not providing that value to the company, they're not going to get paid accordingly, and they're going to self-select out.
Yeah, some way to align the incentives, right? And so for an integrator, you want to align the incentives to the profitability of this year's plan.
Okay.
For the integrator, or for the visionary, you'd ultimately want to align it to the share value. I think that's the best way to align it to a visionary. Maybe you have some specific rocks you tie bonuses to, or if you have a special strategic initiatives that the board has voted on, or the shareholders have voted on, or the manager has voted on, depending on how your entity is structured. Aligning the incentives from top to bottom, right? For sales reps, aligning it to cost on margin, production managers, cost on margin, painters, the labor allocation for the job, right? Those are ways to align the incentives that it reduces the amount of how much you have to legislate the day-to-day minutia of activity. Right? And this is something I was just working on, probably the last transaction between Paris Painting and Olive Holdings. And we're getting into, how do we legislate all these desires of behavior? And there's a million different things we're looking at. Ultimately, just decided on, let's just align the incentives at the end of the day. And if we align the incentives, they'll guide both parties to having the right behaviors, and we don't have to think through all this other crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm. So who did you find? Who is this first integrator that you brought on?
So Alex is the integrator.
Alex. Yep. Okay. That's right. And how did you structure that deal?
So there's two components to that. So he became a partner in Paris Painting, enough where it was meaningful. And that was on a seller finance note after he had been our president and done a tremendous job for a little over a year.
Okay.
So he had earned his stripes and was like, okay, how do we lock this guy up? And I'm sitting there, this kind of always an awkward position where, I let Chet handle the negotiations, because I'm kind of sitting there saying, it's one is I'm going to play hardball. On the other side, I'm saying, please, 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 please buy equity in this company, because I want you to be vested and I want you to care about this, and you're going to do a great job and I'm going to benefit from it. Right. So you kind of have this dichotomy that's moving there. It was nice with him because we also had this carrot of Olive Holdings. And that was, the vision we were able to cast to get, I would say, better talent than we deserved as a small painting company. We were able to cast this vision of what we were going to be building with a larger holdings company, and the opportunity to become investors and shareholders and founders in that company, as well as the opportunity to have roles based on your performance. And so those were additional carrots that were thrown out to all the initial kind of key players.
So when you brought Alex on, what was the day-to-day responsibility of the integrator?
So integrators ultimately in charge of delivering a profit to the bottom line. And so when he first came on, I believe it was on a contract basis to do what we call GAMs, which are the old GS&Rs, basically one-on-one meetings with our sales reps and project managers that neither Chet or I wanted to do, but that we knew from interacting with him back in the day, he was really good at. And so he started out doing that, and then he came in and started managing the P&L. And so his day-to-day, it's basically, it's priority management. So what are the highest activities that he can do day-to-day to affect the bottom line? And usually that's coaching and developing somebody's skill. Sometimes it's putting out the big fires. Sometimes it's dealing with ugly conflicts. Sometimes it's leading a team meeting. Sometimes it's drafting some kind of proposal or legal thing. But usually it's developing the skill of the people around him. And that's what it was back then. And that's what he does today. What he does today is, I think that's what he enjoys doing today. That's what he spends most of his time doing today, is developing the skill of the people around him.
So what skill set / preferences would you recommend an integrator have?
Okay. A good integrator has to be really good at conflict, first of all, right? They're like the mean bad guy. And, they have to care. they have to care, and they have to be aggressive and assertive. Not aggressive. They have to be assertive. They have to care. I say a low tolerance for pain, but what I mean by that is when you're starting a company, you're founding a company, you need a high tolerance for pain because it's never going to be perfect. It always has to just get off the ground. But then as you start to scale and bring on an integrator really wants to package things up and make them perfect and squeeze a margin point here and squeeze a margin point here and squeeze a margin point there. So relatively like low willingness to accept pain, but still tough. But I'd say, rush the conflict, high EQ, for us, and I made this
emotional intelligence.
In the painting trade. I think one of the best things you can have as an integrator is someone who's highly skilled in the art of coaching, right? So a president would have VPs that report to them. And so you need to, so we hired an integrator builder. That's probably another component of this because you can hire integrator scalers, integrator sustainers, or integrator builders. And we hired an integrator builder, right? So you have to develop people into those VP roles. Right. So Alex developed Micah to be the VP of sales. He developed Mark to be our VP of production. And he's now developing Mark to become the integrator of Paris Painting. Right. So he's really good at developing people, good at leaning into conflict, and then aligned to your incentives of the shareholders.
Mm-hmm. What was the dynamic like between Alex and Chet?
They're both strong personalities. They both care a lot and they both have good hearts. And that, I think that's really important. Because you can have very strong personalities that clash and oftentimes have misaligned incentives with each other. But that dynamic is, the visionary is there to cast the vision. They're looking out. So most of their time is looking out. The integrators, most of their time is looking in. They're in charge of delivering on the plan. And some of the common rubs that you get between the integrator. So here's a very common rub between an integrator and a visionary. A visionary could be, and probably is exposed to be, feeling like they're providing all the value, right? That'd be a common feeling for a visionary to feel. I'm making the big decisions. I'm driving the shareholder price. I put this special project that I'm working on together, and ultimately I'm the one creating all the value. The integrator is exposed to, and oftentimes does feel like they're the one that's doing all the work, right? This person, all they get to do is plan in their fancy office. I'm out here, in the weeds of things, slogging it out. End of the day, nothing happens without me doing it. I'm the integrator. And those dynamics, a lot of that gets solved through relationships. And relationships take work. They happen in the marginal life, and you got to build that margin out. And those are some of the dynamics that I've seen at play.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I've also experienced, because I've been a visionary, I've been an integrator, I've also been on the sidelines as a shareholder, watching those two interact.
So to clarify just what you said before, the visionary is really focused on shareholder value. The integrators really focus on profit margin.
The P&L, yep.
P&L. And would you say, your average, quote unquote, run-of-the-mill painting business probably doesn't need a visionary, right? To maximize shareholder value. Like the CEO the founder can remain the visionary, and they should hire an integrator / general manager. Like, do you think that would make more sense?
99% of painting companies are not companies. They're owner operators slinging a brush that are in startup mode, which is fine, but you've yet to build even your core three of a team, right? So you want your coordinator or your office person, your project manager, your sales leader, right? That's kind of your core three before you. Oftentimes the founder is going to wear all the hats in the company start. You're typically being wearing the integrator and visionary hat until you build out those core three. But yeah, you kind of have to be the visionary and the integrator in a startup, from scratch, unless you're going to, just scale the things off the wall to start.
Yeah. But then once you get those core three, your sales leader, your production manager, and your admin, how should you think about the integrator role?
What do you mean?
Like, is that, do you think the time, once you get those three in place and you're now running a profit, should you start thinking about that in order to not only grow, but like to get some of your life back?
Yeah. It depends what you like to do or what you want to do.
Because it comes back to vision, right?
Yeah. Some of that's vision. Like what do you want this to be, a lifestyle business that's an extension of yourself? There's nothing wrong with that. It's God bless the USA. It's a great thing. Do you want to become a passive share? Do you want to have the option to become a passive shareholder in your business? Well, you're definitely not going to be the integrator. The integrator should be waking up at 3 a.m. worried about something. And I don't care what it is, but they should be stressed out. And I would just say, It's nice to have an integrator when you can get them, because you know that they're ultimately concerned about those things. But yeah, the way you should think about it is, what is the vision that you're casting? What is the realistic potential of the organization that you've founded? And what roles are required for that? Right? What do you like to do? Right? Most people, it's hard to give that role up. It's also very hard to find. It's also hard to, I kind of said earlier, the quality of your integrator is going to be capped by the quality of your visionary. And so if you're not a really good visionary and you bring on a really good integrator, that could be a challenge. And just to be aware of that and acknowledge it. And maybe you're bringing on more of a general manager, and you're kind of quasi playing integrator and visionary for a time being, until you can scale so there's enough of a vision that you can start to cast and show the promise of the ability, now you can recruit top level talent.
Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting actually next week. One of the exercises that we're doing with the guys and girls of the mastermind is like a BHAG exercise. So like, what is your 3-year vision?
Yeah.
How does that relate to a 1-year goal? And then what do you have to do in the next 90 days to accomplish that? So if you want to come a little bit early.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited for this. I love entrepreneurs, first of all. And especially painting contractors. They're all like really tough, really gritty. Maybe they're not quite sure what they are. It's kind of like I was describing when we started this episode, like, what am I? What am I?
Mm-hmm.
They're typically maybe a little bit of visionary, maybe a little bit of integrator. They've got this great opportunity in front of them. The world is their oyster. It's entrepreneurism. I'm excited to be a part of those exercises. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Like I said, if you can come a little bit earlier, I think we're doing that over lunch.
I literally blocked off 2 days. So
let's go. It's going to be awesome. So now we kind of talked about like with the everyday painting contractor, how they can use it. If someone is just figuring out their entrepreneurship journey, they just hired their core 3, what would a general manager even do, right? Like one step back, what's the difference between an integrator and a general manager?
I honestly don't know. I think it's just semantics. I mean, I think of a general manager as like reporting to an ultimately an integrator. But what would the integrator do then if they have been a general manager?
Someone's got to sit in the office and drink scotch.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the org chart, you have your technicians and your sales reps, and your project managers. And then above them, you would have some kind of VP level staff typically, right? So you'd have someone that oversees all the sales reps, somebody that oversees all the project managers, somebody that oversees, I don't know if I described this right from the beginning, but someone that oversees the coordinators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their job is not to do the sales, not to do the project management, not to do the coordination, but to influence the results of those that are.
Like the sales rep will do ride-alongs and they'll do buddy estimates and they'll review proposals and like they'll support on follow-ups and like
the sales manager, the VP of sales will do these coaching activities to affect the performance of one-on-one. They'll have one-on-one meetings. They'll do coaching events. And may do like a team L10 with all their sales reps, right? And so you kind of put that into each function of the business. So then what would an integrator do above that? The same thing to the VP level staff, right? So they would take your sales manager, your coordination manager, your project manager, right? Your VP of production, and do ride-alongs, one-on-ones, team meetings, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately you pick out your calendar where the highest impact activities you can do day to day, week to week to affect the net profit. That's going to look different for the season of the company that you're in, what scale it is, what year it is. Is this a COVID year? Is this a boom year? Is it a tough year? Does your VP of sales need more support this year? Oh, no, you have a new bunch of new coordinators. So you got to lean in over there. You got turnover in your project management role. So you got to lean in there, or maybe your NPS just took a hit, your net promoter score. And so you got to really lean into the quality of the customer experience. These are all things that the integrator should be thinking about on how they support everybody's activities.
Like holistically looking at the operations and being useful where necessary. Yeah. Kind of being a chameleon.
Yep. That's what I think of. And
that's awesome.
It's just because people are not self-regulating enterprises. We all need this regulating, like very few people, and I haven't met them, are truly autonomously driven. Everybody, I feel like, performs better with a coach. And that could be, a business coach, that could be a fitness coach, It could be a spiritual coach, it could be a marriage coach, right? All these different functions of your life. Everybody performs better with a coach. And that's kind of what the VP level staff and the integrators are, is they're high level coaches that help with their direct reports performance. They also steward the culture of the company, take on these big rocks and these special projects, but maybe that's a good description of them.
Yeah. I mean, I know I need an integrator at Painter Growth.
We've talked about that.
Yeah. It's like, they don't come. I mean, I could do like some specific recruiting, or even talk to like the EO recruiters or the EOS recruiters,
Sure.
and see if I can find someone. But
well, you're the visionary that got started. Yeah, and that's kind of like, I don't know. Painting contractors are weird, but I'd say in general, most startup people are probably visionaries. They probably, or would lean towards the visionary scale. Like it's fairly rare that somebody starts their own company. Now, people who are like buying into franchises are probably not visionaries. They're probably integrators, or they're just burnt out, misinformed corporate refugees.
There is a EOS Worldwide quiz that you can take online to find out if you're an integrator or a visionary. Yeah,
maybe I'll take it before your conference next week.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. So I guess, would you so there's two main books that are on visionaries versus integrators. The first, there's Rocket Fuel, and then the other one is Traction.
Yeah.
Right.
They're both good. I would probably start with Traction. It gives you a little bit of a framework, and then Rocket Fuel is more honed in specifically on that dynamic.
Yeah. So Traction by Gino Wickman.
Yep. Yeah. It's like an orange book. Usually has a big rubber tire on it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend reading that, even if you're, in startup mode, to see what's possible.
Well, just to know the different. So this is I think it's very accomplishable. It's not that hard. Just to think through the hats that you're wearing, even if they're multiple hats. And you should have these conversations with yourself. Like, as a visionary, here's what I'm doing. And I'm going to talk to my integrator like this. And you put your integrator hat and you say, yes, sir, Mr. Visionary. And then you say, okay, I'm the VP of sales. And my integrator's being so mean, but I know he's well-intentioned. And so let me think about that, how I can improve my performance. And then put your integrator hat on. And you're like, oh, I was pretty mean to that VP of sales. Let me clarify what I was saying. So just wearing these different hats, it's a good exercise to begin because as you scale and grow, you're probably going to continue to wear multiple hats, right? Even in my role, I would say I'm a board member and a shareholder. And so you have to put on different hats sometimes and say, what would these different people want? What would they desire? Or then I even have a role, I'm kind of company mascot. And you have all those different incentives, different preferences, depending on the hat that you're wearing. Get used to talking to yourself if you're wearing multiple hats through those lenses.
Mm-hmm. That actually really helped me recently. That tip you gave me last time we spoke, because I often just think like I don't consider the full value of the shareholder equity as often as I should, I think. Right. So I make decisions based on the P&L, but the decisions in like the 30-day or 90-day P&L, those best decisions are not necessarily the best decisions for like the long term.
This might be a fun exercise for the conference next week if we go through, what's the share value of your company now based off of use these baseline valuation methods, right? And then say, what could your share value be, with this BHAG in 5 years out? It's like, oh, and then what's your annual rate of return, over those 5 years? It's like, oh gosh, I'm making a lot more in equity than I'm making in income. Maybe I should focus on my equity a little bit. And that's a good eye opener for people. They think of like, this is kind of the investor mindset of, would you rather make $100,000 of income or $100,000 of asset appreciation, right? Or how about $200,000 of asset appreciation? Right?
Yeah.
And you say like, well, how much money did you make last year? You say like, oh, I made my income. Like, oh, but you also own like all this real estate and these things, and that appreciated that much last year. So you kind of made that appreciation last year as well. It's like, oh, I didn't really think about that. And so getting people to kind of think through the value of the equity and, the income that they're earning year over year as they build an asset can be pretty eye-opening and very inspiring.
Mm-hmm. I mean, true. But again, only if in your vision in one day, like you feel the need to build your shareholder value because you have the, what do you call it? The circumstantial event or the inciting incident.
Yeah. Like, and it's hard in painting companies because there's typically not a market of buyers. Who is going to buy? Because and this is kind of,
you need to get to like minimum 500K EBITDA. but preferably like $1 million EBITDA to get any sort of reasonable multiple.
Well, you're ultimately, what is somebody buying when they buy your company? What and literally having this conversation now with somebody I won't get too much detail. It's like, oh, he wants to do a full sale. It's like, oh, what are you selling? From what I understand, you do all the sales, and I have to like talk him through this in a kind way because he's not thinking about it. Now I say all that. There's a sucker born every minute. I've talked to a few of them after they've bought painting companies and they realized, oh shoot, I personally guaranteed an SBA loan. And I bought a business that only operated because the former owners were the key players in it. And now I own this company and I personally guaranteed this debt and I don't know how to run a painting company. Can I please partner with Olaf? Like,
yeah.
God bless those guys that got their cash up front. God bless them.
Yeah.
I would not bank on that.
Talking to someone in Florida, in Orlando at the PCA, he bought a painting company for like 2 times earnings, but literally didn't buy anything. It didn't even have employees. It was all subs.
Yeah.
And it was like, he was $500K in debt now with not even in contracts. It's like
dude, I could talk about this all day. And I hope we'll talk about this at the conference or just hang out, but it's kind of like, as an investor, you want to say like, what am I buying? Right. And you want investors, whenever you buy an asset, you want to buy the likelihood of future streams of income. And so
if you were to buy the discounted future cash flow, same as the discount of the future discounted future cash flows. That's how stock prices,
as well as the likelihood.
So
what is the stability? So if I were to buy the land under a CVS, I would pay a lot for that land because that CVS is not going away. It's like, send me my distribution every year. That's as much as I'm going to think about it. To be quite frank. If you're buying a painting company, it's kind of like, how much are we going to have to think about this? What is the likelihood? I just paid $100,000. Is this going to give me a 10% return every year? Likely not, unless I really engage. Okay, now I just bought myself a job, and that's not a terrible thing either. But if you can build, if you want to have an inciting incident, that could be taking on a partner, could be doing an ESOP, selling to some of your employees, it could be looking to try and do a full exit. But how stable is this business? How likely is it going to produce future cash flows? The most common.
And that's where Olaf's business model comes in, is you arbitrage that difference through skill.
That's the
right?
goal.
You
and they become more valuable as you have
buy low, inject a bunch of skill and value in people and systems, and then not even sell high, but just like retain.
Yeah, it will benefit from the cash on cash returns, right?
Yeah,
and that's an aligned incentives with the founders and owners as we come on as a minority partner.
Yeah,
but and then if there ever was a desire to gain liquidity, there's now a marketplace. So let's say you're a founder and you say, yeah, I would like to buy a Culver's franchise, or I'd like to buy a nice log house. And if you're going to try and sell 10% of your painting company, that's a very tough proposition, unless you've entered into an ecosystem where there are many buyers or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And
that's one of the other benefits of like the Olaf ecosystem is, somebody has this, let's say they want to sell 10% of their company because they want to buy a log cabin, Olaf Holdings would love to buy that. There's also a whole ecosystem of painting contractors. We all value companies the same way. We all do the same reporting metrics. And there's now a marketplace to bid on the equity of these painting companies.
It's exciting, man. Really cool what you built.
We're on the way. Yeah, it's I would say being built.
Sorry, our building. Yeah,
we are building, and it's with a team of people, and we are super excited too. We think it's novel. We think it's kind of the spear tip of helping professionalize the industry. More from a top-down approach. There's obviously a lot of bottom-up that's phenomenal and happening, and I'm going to be a part of that.
That's where we're working. We're working bottom-up.
I'm going to be a part of that with you next week.
Yeah.
But if you can start to prove out the ability to build these businesses into assets that have value in their equity, that's where you get really top business talent that now streams into the industry, right? Because top business talent was not building breweries 20 years ago. They are building breweries now, right? Mm-hmm. The reason is because there's now a market for those, because they've proven that they can build equity. That's what top business talent wants to do. They don't want income, they want equity, and they want to build it.
And we've proven, in the last 10 years that there's huge opportunity in painting, and it's not going anywhere. And you're not getting anywhere. Painting isn't getting taken by AI or automation. There's no inherent threat to painting.
There's no threat to it. The threat is like, wait till good talent comes in, because there's a lot of businesses that, quite frankly, should not be in business. They're skating by the skin of their teeth. They're low performers, right? So people who are not pursuing coaching like Painter Growth, right? So if you're a painting contractor, you're listening to this, I would say buckle up. It's going to get a lot more competitive. You get people who are good at business flocking to the trades, and painting is not going to be sheltered from that. And so if you're not working with a coach, if you're not working with a mastermind group, if you're not trying to sharpen your skill, this can be a tough ride. That's my prediction. They call me the painting prophet. It's going to be a tough ride over the next 10 years because it's going to get a lot more competitive. You thought you had a good edge because you had a scheduling widget on your website 5 years ago. You're going to get people who know how to do business flocking to this industry, and it's going to get competitive. That's what I believe.
Wise words.
Get gored.
Get gored. Well, Jason, as always, thrilling conversation, man.
Yeah,
and
no, I got fired up there for a second. Sorry for that.
Yeah, that was excellent. That's going to be an Instagram short. So
people start booing me. Boo, you're the worst.
Cool. No, they're saying boo earns.
Thank you. Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Jason Paris, for coming on again today, man. Always delightful conversation with you. And I think that this is a super high impact conversation. So stoked to hang with you in 5 days.
Looking forward to it, man.
Sweet. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.